From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aishah Ashraf. Senator Chuck Schumer calls the United Nations anti-Semitic after it accuses Israel of genocide. His remarks and the controversy, this and more, coming up. The voice of America has gone silent in parts of Asia, the Middle East, and beyond, as most of its workforce has been locked out. Some radio frequencies stopped broadcasting entirely, while others played only music, according to employees. The shutdown has affected more than 1,300 staff members, including journalists and producers. This follows an executive order by President Donald Trump that drastically cut funding for U.S. government-backed media outlets. Crystal Thomas, Human Resources Director at the U.S. Agency for Global Media, notified employees via email on Saturday. Staff were blocked from entering VOA's Washington headquarters, with some sent home mid-shift. VOA Director Michael Abramowitz described it as an unprecedented event. For the first time in 83 years, VOA is being silenced, he wrote on LinkedIn. A U.S. federal judge has ordered Customs and Border Patrol officials to appear in court. They must explain why they defied his order on the deportation of a Muslim doctor last week. Judge Leo Sorokin ruled that Dr. Rasha Alawiye should not be deported without 48 hours' notice, but officials still sent her to Paris on Friday night. Court documents say Alawiye's cell phone contents led to her detention and deportation from Logan Airport in Boston. She is a kidney doctor at Brown Medicine and a Lebanese citizen. She landed in Lebanon Sunday morning, according to a friend. Judge Leo Sorokin was set to review the case at a hearing today. The Council on American Islamic Relations has strongly condemned the Trump administration for deporting Alawiye. A rally in her support has been planned in Rhode Island. Senate Minority Leader for the Democratic Party, Chuck Schumer, is calling the United Nations anti-Semitic. He made the statement in an interview with New York Times reporter Lulu Garcia-Navarro, published yesterday. They discussed a variety of topics, including his forthcoming book, Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning. Schumer said Hamas has committed a genocide, not Israel. When Garcia-Navarro reminded him that a UN special committee has used the word genocide for Israel, Schumer responded by calling the UN anti-Semitic. Schumer's book tour was abruptly postponed since he has been facing backlash over voting for the House-approved government funding bill that averted a shutdown on Friday. Many Muslim countries mark Saturday as World Orphans Day on the 15th day of Ramadan. The day was designated by the OIC in 2013 to raise awareness of the plight of orphans, especially in conflict zones. This year's observance comes amid suffering in Gaza under harsh conditions in the wake of Israel's genocide in the region. At the Al-Baraka orphan camp in Khan Yunis, children whose parents were killed by Israel are fighting for survival. Their lives are marked by loss, hardship, and uncertainty. Muhammad al-Satlawi lost her husband and 2 sons in the war. Now she lives in a makeshift tent, struggling to raise her surviving children alone. Her daughter, Tala, recalls being pulled from the rubble after her father's death. Another mother, Ahmed Bennett, is caring for her family alone after losing her husband and children. Her son, Ahmed, expressed his sorrow, saying, "On this day, others have their fathers. We don't." As Gaza's orphans endure unbearable pain, the world is reminded of the urgent need to protect and support these vulnerable children. 3 deportation flights landed in El Salvador despite a judge's order to halt them. A U.S. federal judge barred the Trump administration from using a wartime law to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members. The judge also ordered planes that had already taken off to turn around. But flight records reviewed by the Washington Post show 2 planes left Texas while the case was being reviewed. A 3rd flight departed even after the written order was issued. Amnesty International has called the deportations racist targeting of Venezuelans based on broad claims of gang links. Indonesian students protest outside India's embassy, condemning rising Islamophobia. Their demands and global reactions coming up next.
Assalamu alaikum. This is the largest refugee camp in the world. 1 million people are sitting here, doing nothing essentially, cannot study, cannot have a living, and world has to give them, feed them bit by bit, little bit of food. I find children, all skinny children around me, and they're wondering what's our future. Since I came from America, they're asking me this question, what's the future for us? Please join Burma Task Force. It's a coalition of 38 organizations. Support Burma Task Force, join Justice for All. Let's change the future for 1 million people sitting here in the world's largest refugee camp for 7 years. Join now.
Welcome back. Students in Indonesia staged a protest outside the Indian embassy in the capital Jakarta, condemning rising Islamophobia in India, which is home to 200 million Muslims. Protesters demanded accountability from the Indian government and international bodies, urging decisive action against rising hate crimes. The protest was organized to mark the International Day to Combat Islamophobia on March 15th. It was led by Dewan Dakwah Indonesia, which accused Indian authorities of failing to curb religious violence. The UN General Assembly has designated March 15th to combat Islamophobia. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned of a global surge in anti-Muslim bigotry, urging governments to protect religious freedoms and calling on online platforms to counter hate speech. Pakistan's UN envoy Munir Akram, speaking for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, called for urgent global action against Islamophobia and religious intolerance. His remarks were part of the UN General Assembly's observance of the day. The Grand Imam of Egypt's Historic Al-Azhar Ahmed Al-Tayyib called for legal measures to combat anti-Muslim discrimination. On the eve of the International Day to Combat Islamophobia on March 15th, a Muslim rights group says Canada must do more to fight hate. Amira Al-Ghawabi, Canada's Special Representative on Islamophobia, says Muslims continue to face systemic barriers, violence, and discrimination. She warns that Islamophobia fuels racial profiling and unfair security concerns. But Canadian Muslim Foreign President Samir Majzoub says Ottawa must introduce stronger hate speech laws and tougher interventions. The government says it is tackling the issue, boosting funding for community security and anti-racism programs. Governor General Mary Simon also urged Canadians to stand against hate. She said online and offline harassment weakens the country. The European Commission hosted a high-level conference in Brussels to tackle rising anti-Muslim hatred and discrimination in the EU. The event, co-organized with the Council of Europe, brought together officials, envoys, and ambassadors dedicated to fighting racism and harmful narratives. The conference was held ahead of the International Day to Combat Islamophobia on March 15th. The UN established this day in 2022 to mark the anniversary of the 2019 mosque massacres in Christchurch, New Zealand, where 51 worshippers, including children, were killed. Muslims are the EU's second largest religious group with an estimated 25 million people, mainly in France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Spain. Turkiye reaffirmed its commitment to combating Islamophobia on the 6th anniversary of the Christchurch, New Zealand terror attack. In a statement marking the International Day to Combat Islamophobia on March 15th, Turkiye's foreign ministry condemned hatred against Islam. It stressed that Islamophobia threatens not just Muslims, but also global peace and harmony. Turkey urged global unity to stop such hate crimes and protect religious values from attacks. The country's foreign ministry paid tribute to the 51 victims of the attack and called for stronger international efforts to fight anti-Islam sentiment. On March 15, 2019, Australian white supremacist Brenton Tarrant opened fire at 2 mosques in Christchurch, killing 51 people and injuring 40. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 2020. A suspected suicide bomber struck a paramilitary convoy in Pakistan's Balochistan province, killing 5 people. The attack took place in Nushki district on Sunday, killing 3 troops. More than 43 others were injured, officials said. According to the Pakistan Army's Inter-Services Public Relations, a vehicle-borne bomber rammed an explosive-laden car into the convoy. Security forces later killed 3 suspected terrorists in an operation. Authorities suspect the Balochistan Liberation Army, a separatist group, was behind the attack. It comes just days after BLA militants hijacked a passenger train in Bolan, killing 26 civilians and 5 troops. Footage aired on Geo News showed a burnt vehicle at the site. The condition of several injured remains critical at Noshki Civil Hospital. Interior Minister Mohsen Naqvi and Balochistan Chief Minister Sarfraz Bukti condemned the attack, vowing strict action against those responsible. Pakistan has witnessed a rise in militant violence in recent months, particularly in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. In a separate incident, 2 policemen and a security guard were killed in targeted attacks claimed by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. A court in Bangladesh has upheld the death penalty for 20 students and life imprisonment for 5 others for killing student Abrar Fahad. The High Court dismissed appeals by the convicts, confirming the 2021 lower court verdict. Fahad, a second-year student, was tortured to death in 2019 by members of the ruling party's now-banned student wing, the Bangladesh Students' League. Attackers accused him of supporting the opposition after he criticized Indian water policies on Facebook. The killing sparked nationwide protests, leading to swift legal action. Attorney General Muhammad Asaduzzaman said the verdict was upheld. Fahad's family welcomed the ruling but expressed disappointment as one convict remains at large. Defense lawyers plan to appeal to the Supreme Court. Fahad became a symbol of resistance during last July's uprising against the government, with his portrait displayed across Bangladesh. The transitional government, formed after ex-Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned, awarded him the country's highest honor this year. The city of Daraa, where the Syrian revolution began over 14 years ago, lies in ruins after years of attacks by the Ba'ath regime. Drone footage by Anadolu news agency shows widespread destruction in homes, schools, and mosques. The revolution started in March 2011 with peaceful protests in Daraa. It was triggered by the arrest and torture of teenagers who painted anti-regime slogans. Protests soon spread nationwide, demanding political reforms and freedom. The crackdown escalated into a brutal civil war. On December 8, 2024, anti-regime forces took control of that capital, Damascus. President Bashar al-Assad fled to Russia, ending the Ba'ath Party's rule since 1963. In January, Ahmed al-Shara, a key opposition leader, was declared president for a transitional period. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.